If you want to build a SaaS app where users can have their own custom domains, Vercel makes this really easy. So we're going to talk about what multi-tenant platforms are. We're going to show a quick demo we built, and then we'll get into the code as well. Let's actually start with the demo. So let's say I want to make a new custom subdomain with some emoji. Maybe I want hello world, and we'll do an emoji with a smile, and we'll create this. Now you'll notice we've updated the URL to be helloworld.vercel.pub, and we get this custom page where we can display our emoji. Now, for a given domain like acme.com, I have many different subdomains that I can add. Maybe I want lerob.acme.com, etc. Any number. This is made possible through wildcard domains. So we have star.acme.com. And on my Vercel project, I'm able to add this wildcard domain and have unlimited custom domains and wildcard domains that I can add to my project. So I can have any number of tenants or customers that can make their own page here. And I can actually go and check out the admin. We can see some of the different ones that have been created here. Nice, that looks wonderful. And maybe I want to make my own Lerob. Cool, let's do this. Awesome. So that's a quick demo of the app that we built. You can not only have wildcard domains, but also custom domains. And the idea is to show the basics of building multi-tenant apps without it being too overwhelming, because you can go pretty in depth with this. Now, why might you want to build a multi-tenant application on Vercel? Let's talk about this, and then we'll get into the code. So one, you can automatically set up SSL and DNS. You don't have to configure any of that yourself. We allow unlimited custom domains. So any number of custom domains you want to bring, like lerob.com, or shadcn.com, plus wildcard domains. It's all included in the platform. You can preview your changes automatically, and we have first-party integrations with things like Redis or Postgres. So actually, this demo is built using a Redis data store. There's been some awesome customers who have built on Vercel, who are building multi-tenant applications, who have said that the GitHub integration is really smooth, that we help them not worry about how they actually roll out code. They can just very safely do it without downtime. And having unlimited domains is a huge advantage for these customers. So let's go take a look at the code, talk about how the demo works, and then I'll also talk about some additional Vercel benefits. So this code is fully open source. I'll put a link in the description or as a reply if you want to get started with it. But we've tried to really simplify the previous example we had down to just the core concepts. It's built with all the latest Next.js app router, React 19, a Redis data store, Tailwind, and shadcn UI as well, so you can build your own design system and component library. The main structure is actually pretty simple. There is a specific route for each subdomain. So if I want lerob.acme.co, that is a subdomain or a tenant of our application, and each one of those has a page. So inside of this page, for example, we're reading the params, we're getting information about the tenant, so getting the subdomain data. If there isn't one, well, we just return, and otherwise we display that information on the page. Now, you might notice you can route directly to those pages with lerob.acme.com. You're not actually seeing this /s/subdomain. So how does that work? Well, this is where Next.js middleware comes in. Next.js middleware is going to make this very easy for you to look at the incoming request. Middleware runs before everything else in your application. We're going to extract out the subdomain if it exists, and this has some logic to handle on localhost or in preview environments on Vercel. If we do have a subdomain, well, for now we have this admin page that is kind of here just for the demo, but you could, prevent going to that if you're on a specific subdomain and add some authentication or authorization checks down in the admin pages. And if you're on the root path, well, let's just rewrite to that page. So if I'm going to lerob.acme.com, I can actually rewrite into this /s/subdomain. What does rewrite mean specifically? It means that the URL doesn't change. So the URL still looks like lerob.vercel.pub or acme.com, but underneath, middleware is actually rewriting that request to keep the same URL, but point to /s/subdomain. So middleware is a really key component here of making multi-tenant applications in Next.js very seamless. So we talked about the subdomain page for each tenant in our application. We have the middleware that routes between the two. And then we also have a few other things. So we have our root layout. It's just setting up the basic scaffolding of our application. And then we have the main landing page where we have this subdomain form. So this is where you're actually entering in Lerob, and then an emoji for your subdomain. Now, if you haven't seen some of the latest React 19 features, this will be a fun repo to look at as an open source example, but we're using use action state. So this is a client component, which you'll see denoted at the top. And you'll see we also have a bunch of Shad CNUI components that we're bringing in, including this awesome emoji picker library built by our friends over at LiveBlocks. So down below in here, we have some action, and it's this create subdomain action, and then we have a form. And the action prop allows us to trigger this when we submit the form. So let's take a look at what create subdomain action does. We get the data from the form, so the actual input values from those two different inputs for the subdomain and the icon. We check if it's a valid icon. We do a little bit of sanitization. We check if it already exists, and we're able to go to Redis and actually look this up. And if it doesn't, then we add it. And at the end, we actually redirect back to that newly created route. Now, you'll notice I'm doing a return here where I'm returning the information that we pulled from the form. So the subdomain and the icon, whether there was a success state or an error state. Now, this is a nice feature here that you might not have noticed before, but let's say I go back to just the main vercel.pub, and I do something like this, where it's in all caps, and I try to add some emoji. Well, it turns out that subdomains can only have lowercase letters, numbers, and hyphens. Now, what's really nice is I did a form submission. The default behavior in the browser is to clear out the inputs. You're posting back to itself in the form and remove all of that data. But what use action state can do is actually retain the state of that previous submission and continue keeping those values in the inputs. So if you go take a look here, we're actually deriving the state from use action state. So we read if there is a subdomain that we already passed back, or if there is an icon that we already passed back. A little React 19 tip there. And then we're also able to display error states. If we have them, those can be returned back from our server action. That's pretty much it, honestly. We also have an admin page. So this overview admin page, we're getting a list of all of the subdomains, which you can see here. And then we render this list of all the different tenants. Now, in reality, what you'll want to do here is add in some authentication or authorization with your preferred auth provider. The feedback we got on the previous example was it was a bit much, and we wanted to simplify the process of actually deploying, getting the site online, and then allowing you to pick and choose the pieces that you want. So we'll also have other examples that we can link to show you auth practices for different providers in our ecosystem. Now, let's say you've taken that open source template, you've deployed your own, and you're starting to build your own SaaS app. Well, Vercel has a lot of features that will help you understand how that application is performing and just general observability into what traffic is being sent to your site. So for example, I can go into the observability view on your project, and you can see what bots are crawling your website, which maybe you want to allow those, maybe you want to block some of those. You can do that through Vercel's firewall. Maybe you want to dig in further to your function usage. So you see on here, we have /s/subdomain, we have the admin route. We can see more about how much compute we're saving. I just turned on Fluid, so we get to see that number go up. Time to first byte or cold starts pretty low here, which is awesome. Then you can click into these routes and see even more information if you would like, including calls that you've made to external APIs. So in this instance, we have a Redis instance that we're connecting to. And there's really a lot you can dig into here on the observability tab, so definitely worth checking this out. Now, what you might be thinking is, okay, I've got my wildcard domain, I've got lerob.acme.com, but I also want lerob.com. So what we've done is actually broken out the custom domain section into this guide that walks you through how multi-tenant apps work, how some of the features on Vercel work, and how you can programmatically add and remove and update domains using the Vercel TypeScript SDK. Now, this is a wrapper on top of our REST API that gives you type-safe access, so you can also use the REST API directly if you would prefer. But here are some examples for how you can actually integrate that, add domains, custom domains, verify domain ownership, and so on and so forth. So that's a lightning fast run through on how to build multi-tenant platforms on Vercel. We've got a brand new open source example that you can get started with, as well as a new guide that explains some of the copy paste code snippets you can use for managing custom domains. As I mentioned, Vercel has unlimited custom domains. You can add unlimited wildcard domains and have many different tenants in your application. If you're building apps like this, we would love to support you and love to hear your feedback on what you'd like us to add. So please check out the open source example, get started and set up with Vercel and your Redis account, and we'd love to hear how it goes. Peace.